Hey guys, I hope you're all doing awesomely. I'm Nolly and I'm really happy today because finally, I get to show you the drum library that we've been working on for a couple of years with GGD. This one is called Modern and Massive. It's the follow-up to our first product, which was the Matt Halpin signature library. And kind of like the name suggests, the name of the game here is huge sounding contemporary drums. So, kind of think of classic rock setup. So big diameter drums, big bass drum, couple of floor toms, a single rack tom, but recorded in a super contemporary fashion. So these are clean and clear, powerful sounds, kind of full bandwidth in my favorite drum room in the whole world, which is Middle Farm Studios here in the UK, which just has the most incredible explosive ambience to it. I guess sonic signature here would be perhaps a great active rock drum sound. Just those huge drums that are super punchy and powerful and cut through the mix. These tones are still going to work awesomely for metal too. It's quite common, I guess, these days in metal to have really big sounding drums and not the kind of more tinny and pingy drums that were more in fashion a couple of decades ago. And if you program it at low velocities, it's going to cover all sorts of other ground too. As you can see, straight out the bat, this is a lot more advanced looking than the Halpin pack was. We've put a lot of time into developing this and making it, a truly world-class drum sampler. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy using this when you get your hands on it. Straight away, you can see we've actually got a kit view, which is awesome. I think this really helps you kind of visualize what you're doing with the drums, and it's a lot easier to kind of audition the different drums we have all in one place, and it's a much easier bit of workflow there. As this is the default setup. You can see up here in the little snapshot window, it should load up saying default kit raw, which is the state that we're in now. I'll just really quickly click through to give you an idea of what the basic out of the box sounds are here. The default kit is my Q Drum Co. stainless steel drum kit, which is fantastic. This is a really special bespoke drum kit, and it's paired with a Ludwig Supraphonic snare and a really good selection of modern sounding Meinl cymbals. So I'm just going to click through this and we'll maybe dive in a bit deeper. So yeah, hopefully you've got the idea there. This is still quite a natural sounding drum kit. We haven't over processed it or anything like that. So, it's going to be usable for all sorts of styles, but the tones are there. There's really well tuned and cleanly captured drums. But straight away, I want to jump to what's called turbo mode. So we didn't just give you these raw drums and leave it at that. We've actually enabled the ability to blend between completely raw and processed drum sounds on a scale of 0 to 100% on every single input on the mixer. I'll show you more of that later, but first of all, I'm just going to jump to the 100% turbo setting. So now this is the whole kit now with loads of pre-processing on it. I'll just click through to do the same thing for you to hear. Hopefully you can hear that everything got a lot more punchy and closer to a kind of final drum sound there. So just really quickly, I'll give you an overview of some of the different kits. I'm just going to leave it with the turbo on so you can hear it in all its glory. We've got this Q Drum Co kick. We've got a 26-inch Yamaha Recording Custom, which is a beast. Real knocky and clicky. As you can see, the actual GUI changes too to reflect the different drums you select, which is cool. Got a couple of 22-inch bass drums here. We've got Pearl Masters. Got some custom-made drums by Guru Drums, who are a super high-end builder here in the UK and kind enough to lend us a couple of kits to sample for this. Good old Tama Star Classic in there too. So loads of different bass drums for you to experiment with. All of them are great punchy sounds with loads of low end to them. Tom-wise, we've got mostly matching full kits here. So we've got Q, the Yamaha, the Pearl, a couple of Gurus and Tama there, all different options, a couple of 13s, a couple of 12s, actually a 14-inch rack tom from Guru that's awesome. And there's a few different tunings which we've presented depending on the kit. Some of these have coated heads, some of them have clear heads. So you can dive in and really kind of figure out what you like the best. We've got the same deal as far as the first floor tom goes. And we've just got two of the 18-inch floor toms to round out the floor tom layout. We've got the Q and the Yamaha Recording Custom there. In terms of snares, we've got a really wide selection for you. We've got the Ludwig, which we started with, but we've got a Q kit. We've got a Yamaha Recording Custom. These are all in kind of different tunings and loads of different stuff for you to experiment with and see what's going to fit into your mix. We've got the old Pearl Vinnie Paul. We actually sampled this one with the clear head, which is a pretty rare thing to do, and it's got a great pop to it. Really explosive sounding. We've got probably one of my favorite snare drums of all time, my Gretsch Bell Brass, that we like so much. We sampled it twice in 2 different tunings. Whole range of snares there for you to check out in loads of different tunings, some with more muffling than others, different miking setups even in terms of distances. So loads of stuff for you to kind of customize there. Something we're really proud of though with Modern Massive is you should be able to swap out kit pieces at will and find that your mix doesn't fall apart. They're all designed to be close enough that they have a great family resemblance, and you can just get all the nuance out of the different drums to suit your mix of choice. So gone are the days of having to have completely different processing chains depending on which drum you choose, which I know I've definitely found with some other drum libraries in the past. We've got some really great MB20 cymbal crashes. These are probably my favorite crashes. In fact, this one right here, the 20-inch medium heavy crash, that's probably my most used crash of all time. I absolutely love it. We've also got the heavy version, which is a bit trashier sounding. Got an incredible sounding China. Byzant's brilliant there. We've got a Byzant's heavy ride there. We've also got a mega bell for those of you that want, that ultra bell sound, which is cool. Loads of people love that kind of ride sound, so it's cool that you've got the option of a more traditional and kind of heavier sound there. We've got a great little splash here. Got a 10-inch splash. Loads of attack on that one. I love it. Similarly, we have an MB20 medium heavy 18-inch crash, and we also have this medium thin, technically a jazz crash, but I just love how it sounds too. It's nice and short and trashy. Then we have a couple of pairs of hats. We've got some MB20 Soundwave hats, and we've also got some 15-inch Byzant's hats, which similar ballpark, but just the kind of deeper tonality that you get with the bigger hats. I think both of these hats are awesome sounding. You can hear pretty distinctly the different tonality there. So that gives you a kind of overview of what you've got here in Modern and Massive and how you can use the kit page to choose your drums of choice. I'm just going to set up a completely random setup here just to show you just how ugly you can make your your setup should you wish. There you go. Lovely jelly bean kit there for us to use. So even though these are literally all drums taken from completely different kits, it doesn't sound like they shouldn't belong together. So that's one of the things I personally really love about this kit, is pretty much just choose your favorite sounding drums and don't have to worry too much about whether technically they correspond or not. So let's move on from the full kit view. Across the top here, you can see we've got a selection of kick, snare, toms, cymbals, and here these are basically the individual mixer pages for each of those kit pieces. You've also got a little visual there of the drum that you're working on here, the kick drum. You can choose to swap it out on this page too, should you want to. We've got a kick sum. That's a sum of multiple kick inputs that we had inside the kick drum. So that's kind of your kick in. We've also provided on a separate fader the kick sub option, which has a ton of sub low end to it. So this is great if you want to add a bit more extra chunk to your drum sounds. You might not need it, as this is set on default. You've got a ton of sub coming in. However, if it is a bit too much for you to deal with, on every channel you do actually have a high and low pass filter that you can roll up and down here. So should you want to perhaps just take off a little bit of the low end there, or perhaps take off a bit of low end from your kick sum input in order that the sub mic can provide more of that low end, you're completely able to do that here. This bar here, which is orange, indicates the turbo functionality. You might remember I put it onto 100% turbo in the beginning. And as I mentioned, this is essentially my mix processing applied, and it's different processing depending on the kit piece that you select. So the different kick drums all have different processing, and this includes EQ, compression, transient design. There's a load of different parameters being worked as you turn this one knob, and you can control it either over on the right-hand side here from the turbo control, or by just physically dragging this this bar up and down there. To give you an idea of just how much it changes, I'll solo just the kick in. So you can see there's quite a lot of difference there. Gets a lot punchier. You can hear the compression and EQ really taking the kick drum from a more kind of raw, natural state up to a kind of mix-ready amount of punch and beef there. Every channel has this, and it's doing different things on different channels. So if you, for example, like the processing that's being applied by the turbo on your kick sum, but you don't like what it's doing to, say, the room mono mic, you can choose to not use it there, or use less of it there. You can completely tailor how things sound. Personally, I don't think it's going too far to have every channel on 100%. And indeed, if you just want to dive straight into doing some songwriting or even mixing, there's nothing wrong with starting at 100%. I think you'll find it gets you there closer. But if, like me a lot of the time, you want to start from something way more natural and work up to your final tone, you've got the capability there just by disabling the turbo option. Moving on to snare. Again, you can select the snare you want from over here. We've got snare top, snare bottom, pretty standard setup there. We had two different sets of overheads set up during the sampling session. So we had a pair of AKG C414s, the old brass capsule ones. Funnily enough, I'm actually using one of those to talk to you right now. One of the very ones we used to sample. These really kind of have an amazing amount of reach down into the drum sound from above. So you pick up loads of low end there. And they tend to have slightly more of a kind of presence peak than your average small diaphragm condenser, as well as a slightly more rolled off top end ultimately. So instead of only giving you the one option there, we've also given you a pair of small diaphragm condensers. And these are some SE mics that were designed by Rupert Neve that have just an incredible flat top end response that seems to extend basically to infinity. So these give you, to my mind, perhaps a better representation of the cymbals, but they don't give you as much of the drum shell. So depending on what flavor you want, maybe you don't want the overheads to give you much of your drum shell beef, or maybe you do. You can kind of balance those two faders as you see fit. We've also got mono room, room close, which is stereo, and a far room, which is also stereo. Now, in particular, the room far sound with the turbo on 100%, and in fact, with this drum, it's the best thing in the world to me. This is exactly why I love this drum room so much. And in fact, I have so many samples of snare drums being hit in this room, and I use those ambient samples all the time on mixes that I do, for clients too, because it's just so good. I'll just show you what that sounds like. It just can't be beaten. It's just so explosive sounding. I love it. Can't get enough. And that's in your hands too now. So I guess I need to find another drum room that I can use now that you all have my secret ambient sound there. Moving on from the snare, you can choose all three of your toms again from here, as well as setting up your pans. Basically all the same controls that you had on the previous pages. I'll show you what the actual close mics on the tom sound like on their own, since I haven't shown you that. So those are really kind of clean sounding close mic channels for your toms there. They're pretty well on their way in terms of processing. And in fact, even with no processing, they sound awesome. We used my go-to Josephson E22S mics on toms for this session, and they just deliver such a great sound straight off the mic. So much low end. I think you guys are going to have a great time with the toms. And of course, the room sounds so fantastic on the toms too. For those huge kind of floor tom flams, you can crank the rooms there and get just an amazing sound there. I love that. As you can tell, sorry, I guess I'm gushing a bit too much about the drum room. So coming over to cymbals, again, you can select some of the most crucial cymbals here. We've got close mics for your hats and ride, as well as the same mixer channels that we've had for the rest of the kit pieces. Something really cool here is that if you were to go over to the settings page and choose overheads or rooms, here you can actually adjust the playback volume of the different cymbals in the overheads and room mics. So for example, you can see here I've cranked up the splash because a splash is a really quiet cymbal. And while, if you're doing a live drum recording, you have to close mic it if you want to have control over how loud your splash is. To me, that's never a great sound. Mic that close up on the splash tends to be a bit too gongy and weird sounding. So I think this is a really elegant solution. You can just make it louder in the overheads in a way that you couldn't do in real life. Something I didn't mention when we were on the snare page is that we also included the bleed signals for the cymbals and shells. Now, this is something which can be very annoying when you're tracking drums. You know, having super loud hi-hats, for example, coming through in your snare top can kill the amount of processing you can do to it. However, I do find, especially in these styles, that a little bit of bleed helps give a bit of realism there. So here you can choose independently in the top and bottom mics, the bleed levels from the kick, the toms, and the cymbals separately. For example, plenty of kick coming through in the snare bottom can be something kind of cool. You get a bit of the snare buzzing sympathetically with the kick. That can be a part of some people's drum sound. So you've got the option to have that, but without any of the toms and cymbals, should you want. Likewise, you might want some of the cymbals coming through the top just to help fill some of the space there. Entirely your call. You don't have to have it on at all. You can control it from here, or alternatively here on the snare page, you can actually just click bleed there and adjust it. Also, we have full control over the mappings here. You'll find this is a really powerful mapping section. You can load various presets that we've got, including one that corresponds to the Halpern kit if you want to just quickly translate your MIDI over from using that. You can also, of course, export your map if you want to send it to somebody else. One new feature that's super cool that we've added to Modern and Massive and is also going to be rolled out for the Halpern Pack 2 is the inclusion of a groove player. And we've given you a little bit of a sample of some of the MIDI packs that we're going to be releasing. Groove 1 by Anoop Sastry and Song 1 by Matt Halpern. And I can't tell you how great it is to have some MIDI performances which are done by such amazing drummers, because there's such detail, especially in things like the hi-hats, that are so difficult to program in and get right. Even if you're an experienced drummer, it can be really frustrating to get the timing and velocity variation correct. You know, I really like Matt's Song 1 patterns, like for example this one here. You can hear straight away there's so much dynamics in those hats that would be really annoying to have to recreate. Or I think 11's got some good stuff in it too. Just awesome stuff. You can kind of imagine the whole arrangement falling into place around that. You can also load and export your own MIDI, as well as soloing and muting the various kit pieces here. As well as choosing if you want perhaps half the speed or double the speed, depending on your project tempo. So, you know, that's pretty much it. That's my very spontaneous walkthrough of Modern and Massive. There's so much to get to grips with here. So, you know, I've barely scratched the surface, but I hope it's given you a bit of a taste of what Modern and Massive is about. Thank you so much for all the support that you guys have given GGD. And I can't believe, again, that this is finally out. We're so happy. Can't wait to see what you guys think about it.